If you ask what my purpose is, it's really about volunteerism and giving back. And like I said, I've been a volunteer and career fireman mixed over the last 20 plus years. So I think it's important that we all volunteer and give back. And I think that helps drive the community that you work in. I think it's better to open doors than it is to close them. Not everybody's going to agree all the time, and that's okay. But I think it's important that we as HSE and facilities professionals understand and listen to the person that has the opposite view. I've been in rooms with folks where you have 20 people aligned and one person's not aligned. I want to hear what that one person that's not aligned has to say and understand why they're not aligned, because I think that's more important than why the 20 are aligned, and make sure we're making the right decision.
This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. Today's episode is going to be very interesting. It's a topic we have not talked about on the show yet. I'm thrilled to have today's guest join us. With over 20 years of experience in the HSE field, he will bring an incredible wealth of knowledge and real-world expertise to the show. As a seasoned HSE professional, he specializes in industrial hygiene, hearing conversation, biosafety, emergency response, and environmental compliance. But it doesn't stop there. In addition to his HSE responsibilities, he's also a key leadership team member working on a wide range of initiatives, from strategic workforce planning and large capital projects to philanthropy, DE&I, and business continuity. He is the Senior Director of Health, Safety, and Environment at Sanofi. Joe Gilliland, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you for the kind words and for the introduction.
Absolutely. Thanks for investing your time with us today, Joe, and can't wait to get into our conversation here together.
Absolutely. Same here. Got a chance to listen to some of your episodes and know some of the folks that you've had on, and I'm very excited to participate.
Outstanding. All right. So yeah, you've got vast experience in a lot of different like HSE, fire safety, all sorts of stuff. And with that, given that, what's been your biggest lesson learned, Joe?
Yeah, so really the biggest lesson in my career starts earlier in my career. So around the 2005 timeframe, I was a safety manager at a location in Pennsylvania. Had been there maybe about 4 or 5 years, and unfortunately we had a construction fatality. And I knew the person really well, and it was a very unfortunate event. But long story short, we had the new expansion project. We were putting in fencing around the site, and the gentleman that owned the fencing company was literally drilling the last fence post for the gate for the facility. And as he plunged the drill rig into the ground, there was weed fabric underneath, and it drew him into the drill rig. But that experience and going through a tragedy like that, I hope that no one has to go through that. And it definitely calibrated my career. I'd like to say it that way. Really to recalibrate why we're here, why we do HSE. We're here for one another. We're here to make sure people go home in the same or better condition than they came to work. And that day, one of our contractors was not able to go home. And what later unfolded with the investigation and all the information, it was a 1971 Sterling drill rig with zero safety features. The rig came out of the factory basically without any of the modern dead man switches or anything to protect the operator. The only thing that it came from the factory with was a platform to stand on to keep you off the ground, which may have prevented this from happening, which had been removed off the rig. But really, the lesson learned: it was the owner of the company. He's the one that experienced this tragic event, and he would not allow his employees to operate this rig because he knew it was unsafe. And that really, calibrated me in my career. And when I go out to do inspections or I'm working with facilities folks, the question I like to ask them is it safe enough for your children to do this job? And if the answer is no, how do we get it to that point? And that's really helped drive the focus, in what we do and why we do this. is to make sure that we're protected and we don't have, obviously, the ability for a tragic event like this to happen. And when they do happen, we have to make darn sure that we learn as much as we can from these types of events to make sure that they're not able to be a reoccurrence.
Well, first off, Joe, I'm so sorry to hear that for that poor man and his family. Nobody ever wants something like that to happen. It's awful.
Yeah.
I very much like what you said is, with the words, is this safe enough for your children to operate? What a great question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like really keep it so simple. Any other points on safety with that? Like you mentioned different safety equipment, older equipment. Is there a cutoff for the age of equipment, or what else could you share?
Absolutely. So that facility at the time, we did a lot of. I try not to ever shoot from the hip, I guess, is the comment, right? We want to do relentless root cause. We want to understand how to prevent it, and I don't like to have root causes that point back to just training the person more or those sorts of things. So one of the things we did through some industry research, typically equipment like that has a lifespan for their technology of about 10 years. So there's new safety features coming out about every 10 years. So we drew a line and said any high hazard work or equipment, so cranes, drilling, anything that would require high hazard activities, we're not going to allow anything on our sites that's older than 10 years old, period. So, it does limit who's bidding for the work, but it also is ensuring that you have the most recent equipment, latest safety features, and we're not going to have, issues going forward.
So have you done that I know you've been with different companies over the years. Is that a common, more universal practice now? Like the 10-year limit, have you found with your colleagues?
Yeah, I feel in working through the companies that I've been with, we've been able to instill certain or similar rules with those companies, and really, newer is not only always better. I understand that there's equipment that is older that can be modified to be safe, and we've had some equipment where we've done exceptions for items that are 15 or 20 years old that have gone through a safety overhaul. But think about something just like a household circular saw, right? When we were growing up, Jay, you had a corded circular saw with hardly any guarding on it, right? Now these saws you buy today require both hands to be on them, and if one hand releases, they shut off. They have electric brakes. There's all kinds of crazy technology that really makes those tools safer. So when you look at those sorts of things, I really think it's important, in facilities and HSE that we keep up with the technology, with the tools to help protect our people as well.
Absolutely. You mentioned relentless root cause. I know that everyone will have their process for root cause analysis, but I love the word relentless that you used. Could you say a little bit more about your process and how it works and maybe some best practices around that you found?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't take credit for the relentless root cause. That comes from one of your future or past guests. I'm sorry, from Matt Torty, who you've had on the show a couple times. So Matt, if those listeners don't know, I consider him the godfather of HSE management systems. He really is the most knowledgeable person I know in management systems, and also with that relentless root cause methodology. He's kind of the person that I've um, looked up to and followed for many, many years. So relentless meaning that, when you go through the process, there's many different ways you can do root cause. You can look at fish tree analysis. You can look at the 5 whys. You can look at using fancy software like a Taproot and other methods. The most important thing is that you're identifying all of those contributing factors, and you're making sure that when you put corrective actions in place, that there are controls that the person won't have to think about, that'll help correct that from occurring again. And then if you can't do that, if you can't engineer out the hazard, you want systems in place that'll warn of the hazard prior to it occurring. And then, obviously, lastly, PPE or other level 1 controls, I'd call them. We try not to go with those whenever possible. We try to make sure that the root cause escalates up that hierarchy of control and truly is preventing the incident from occurring again.
Are there any steps along the way that you found, Joe, that maybe the listeners and myself could learn are at times missed? And I'm not saying they're obviously not intentionally missed, but where are some gaps that really to watch out for in a root cause analysis, and what could you shed light upon there?
Yeah, absolutely. And not to echo what Matt has said on your show, but really it's avoiding the blame game. No employee comes to work and says, I want to get hurt today, right? That's not on their mind. They're coming to work, and there's various things that drive their behavior, whether it's, hey, we have a production deadline to get this out the door. We have to do this cheaper. We have to do this within this time frame. Those are usually the behaviors or the antecedences that are driving their behavior, right? And then the consequences from that is if you're trying to hit a timeline and you're cutting corners for safety, you're increasing your odds of getting hurt. But really, when you're doing the investigations, it's very, very important to not ever blame the person. To take blame out of the game. Look at the systems, look at everything that supports that investigation, and see what you can do as a company better or as an organization better before you go look at the human aspects that are involved.
It's a huge aspect of it, and I agree. Thank you, Joe, and thanks for bringing up Matt's name. Matt Twerdy was an outstanding guest. I got to know him recently, not about 6 months now. We've known each other, and yes, he was on the show a couple of times. And I bring that up again because he brought on 2 other team members, and we had a panel discussion the second time he came on. He did that for a very intentional reason, and that is the integration of different departments and not calling one separate than another. And I think you and I have talked about integrating relationships with facilities, operations, and quality. If you could maybe speak to that as well.
Yeah, so I think, obviously, if the listeners have a chance to go back and listen to Matt's take on human operational performance, that's really, I'm in the same mindset. But when you look at integrating, and I think this is what makes a successful company. So, if we have any CEOs that listen or any senior leaders that are on the call, it's not about asking our managers or our shop floor folks or our employees to do more with less, right? And that's the way they often feel. It's about integrating our processes and procedures to where when our managers are doing walkthroughs for, facilities checks, for example, they're looking for checking equipment condition. But as part of that walk, let's integrate and look for safety as part of that walk. Let's look at quality. Let's look at other aspects of the business, lean manufacturing. Let's try to make those processes harmonized and make them one instead of having a manager that has to do a Monday safety walkthrough, a Tuesday quality walkthrough, a Wednesday facilities walkthrough, a Thursday productivity walkthrough. When you have that much going on, it creates noise, right? So we don't want safety noise. We don't want quality noise. We want the managers and the employees focused and understanding and listening to the key messages that we want to accomplish. So if they're hearing it from all these different sources, it's just noise and chatter, and you're not going to move an organization forward, in my belief. I believe it's important to work together, facilities and safety, HSE facilities, and also the quality teams. If you're in a pharma industry like I am, it's important that they're all working hand in hand every day and stepping together, not against one another.
Outstanding. Yeah, I have to give props again to Matt and his team, and thank you for just shedding your knowledge upon that too. It's really good. I think he calls it, forgive me if we mentioned it already, or if the words are wrong, campus services more so than yeah.
It's definitely a better way to look at it. We're all here. We call it at the company I'm at, it's integrated work experience, is what they call it. So we try to drive that culture where it's an integrated work experience. It's all of us working together to accomplish the common goals.
So on that note, it's phenomenal way to look at it, way to operate. I think everyone could learn from doing more of that. Things aren't always perfect. I'm not saying that you're having any issues, but are there, again, I'm going to go back to any pitfalls or what should people look out for if it's truly integrated? How do we keep people all, say, rowing in the same direction, Joe? And what have you seen as potential challenges to that integration, and how do you get people back on board if that makes sense?
Yeah, the biggest challenge I think through my career and through the companies I've worked with is keeping people on the task of let's focus on the prioritized items and on the risks at hand. And things are going to happen, right? Some accidents are going to come up, or facilities failure is going to come up that you didn't predict, or that you thought were a lower risk than what they occur. And I would say the biggest thing is to not dive all the resources and come off plan, right? You have to look at them. You have to do investigations. You have to figure out why they happened, but stay the course. Work on your highest risk items first, and really try to avoid changing direction. It's hard with these big organizations when you're going and accomplishing manager system changes or risk reduction. It's very disruptive if you have these ones and twosies that pop up and you turn the entire team to go take care of them. So that's what I would tell any listeners to avoid. You know, look at the statistics, like the unstructured decisions. If you have one injury in a category and you have 15 injuries in another category, let's focus on the 15. Don't worry about the one unless it's a high hazard injury that occurred, right? But really staying calibrated to the mission of risk reduction.
And when you say try to avoid changing direction, would that example be what you just said? If there's 15 here and one there, then stay focused, stay on the mission.
Yeah, stay on the mission. You know, follow the data. Not to bring up or date you and I, but looking at back, what did Rudy Giuliani do in the city of New York when they had all the crime sprees? Right, he didn't go hire more police. He just focused the police where the crime was. So it's often sitting with the C-suite executives and they say, well, what resources do you need? Well, everybody will say, hey, I'd like to have more resources. But the answer isn't always resources. It's, well, let's use our resources wisely. Let's put them towards where our risks are. Let's get them into key areas and let's stop them working on the minutia, the things that don't add value.
Great data, Joe. And, I'd like to ask you this question now. What is the biggest challenge you've faced over the years and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I think a lot of folks will resonate or agree with this. So COVID was definitely a challenging time for all of us. But being in the industry that makes vaccines, we didn't shut down. We had our folks here 24/7, 365. We didn't have the work from home and all these different things that other companies were doing. And during that, I was the project manager for a new waste facility. So the waste facility was roughly $8.6 million project to create a waste handling recycling center. And as you know, during the pandemic, there were shortages for everything. So as we were building and designing the building, the Amazons and other companies of the world were bidding to build warehousing using precast. So precast became long lead time. So we decided to go to metal hung panels. So we changed the design, after it had already been completed, had gone back and done some redesign. And then as we went through the building process, certain materials became unavailable or long lead time that you wouldn't expect. I can remember a fire rated door going on an 18-month back order, holding up an $8.5 million project for one door. Another product was a sealant or a coating that we used in a spill containment area. That was a 18 or 20 week lead time. So just some from memory, but it was that constant battle of trying to find materials that were available, finding other materials that were comparable, and substituting something that was of equal quality, because we didn't want to buy junk to just have to replace it later, right? We wanted to keep the quality spec. So it became it dragged the project out a little longer than we had liked. We ended up being about 9 months behind, and about 5% over budget, which when you're running projects is never a good thing to be over budget. But I think with the pandemic, we didn't have much of a choice.
Well, let me just restate this because that's, if I heard you correctly, the challenge was you're constructing an $8.5 million waste handling and recycling center while managing a vaccine production site during a pandemic.
Correct.
That's a big one.
Yes. Yeah.
And you can't get raw materials.
Right. And averaging, just to throw some stats out there, on a normal operation, we have on any given day roughly 60 people out for 60 to 80 people out in our company for sick days or other things. When we're going through the pandemic, we were managing absences of 200 to 250 people out at a time, and with the mandates for 2 weeks at a clip, it's tough to keep operations running, right? So you look through that was a tough time to manage, I think, for anybody in the industry, and it makes it a good learning experience.
Hey, Rockstars, if you're tuning into the podcast and are feeling overwhelmed by all the maintenance demands at your facility, don't stress. We've got you covered. Our sponsor, Colludus, is your go-to partner to help you tackle all those demands and get them done right, on time, and with top-notch quality. From project planning to execution, Colludus is there to make hard work easy. Visit colludus.com today to get started. How did you keep it running with like that sounded like you in some cases tripled the absent rate at a time at any given time.
Yeah, you prioritize what lines you're running. You prioritize what for facilities, for example, what buildings you're working on, and some of those annual like things like annual PMs in non-critical buildings, we would push them off and move those resources to work on areas that were critical. So it's just
Mm.
a constant balancing act to make sure that you're running the business as effectively as you can.
Sounds like anyone listening might see you as an enormous asset to a big challenge area. You might get some phone calls, Joe.
Sounds good. That's kind of my if you look at my background, I've been a fire 20 years as well. And so I like the challenge. I like to run into burning buildings, not run out of them. So I
Mm.
apply that to the industry as well. I think if I worked in a calm, easygoing place, I would be bored. So I'm always up to help with the challenge.
Amazing. We talked a bit about integrating with lean manufacturing programs and process, and there's some points that I think I'd like you to bring up, Joe, for everyone to
Yep.
hear. If you could walk us through that.
Yeah, I think integrating with lean manufacturing or whatever your company calls your operations, it's important that these cadence walks that the managers are doing and the employees are doing in the morning, or these rituals that they're doing, that they're looking at those facilities and HSE items together, and that they're doing daily checks on high hazard items. We don't want them checking everything. But if you have a critical safety control or a key safety element or key safety control, like an interlock or a guard or something that's critical to protect that employee, we want them checking that prior to use to make sure it's still there, it's functional, and that there's not any problems. And I really think it's critical to integrate that in with facilities as well. So there's things in the facilities environment that you want to make sure that pumps work and pH meters and things that are critical to operation. Make sure that they're in those daily checks and that they're not checking for the minutia like does a door open properly or not? Is the lighting or all 15 lights in the room on? That's not critical stuff that they should be focused on. But to quote a good YouTube video, if the listeners want to go out there, there's a gentleman in the fire service called Gordon Graham, and he does a YouTube video called High Risk, Low Occurrence. That's what we want to focus on, the high risk, low occurrence tasks and items, and make sure that that's where we're protecting our employees.
And you said Gordon Graham.
Gordon Graham, yep. Well known in the fire industry. If there's any firefighters listening, I'm sure they've already watched his videos multiple times.
I mean, fantastic. I want to thank you for sharing that, Joe. I want to jump to your previous history where you were a site fire chief at a major aerospace manufacturing company and kind of walk through that. And that's the piece where when we opened the show, that's more the piece where that really hasn't come up yet on the show. We've talked, thankfully, a bit about HSE but we have not talked about the fire safety aspect so much. So wherever you'd like to start with that would be great.
Yeah, I think I'll start with simpler is better. That would be my starting phrase. When you talk about fire suppression or fire service, simpler is better. And I think as humans, we try to stay up with all the new technologies and we try to be cutting edge. And I can tell you, in the fire service as well as fire protection for industry, simpler has always worked out better for me. You get into these systems. I don't know if the listeners are familiar with like VESDA systems. They're essentially advanced detection systems. And there's nothing against VESDA. They're a great company, but they're these systems that take air samples throughout the factory floor, throughout the high hazard areas, and then they're looking for the presence of smoke or incipient stage fire. And great systems. They work great when they're clean and when they're serviced. But there's a lot of maintenance that has to go with them to make them operate correctly. And so in the industries that we're in, you see a lot more false alarms or issues with those types of systems because of that. And it's nothing against the manufacturer. That I want to put that straight. I'm not telling anybody to go away from them or to not use them, but they make a great product. It's on the maintenance end of it. You have to be doing the maintenance per their recommendations, and if you don't, you're going to have issues. But they're very maintenance intensive. Other things, the listeners might have interest in going through the fire systems evolution. So I'm sure everybody's heard of the term PFAS, right? That's kind of the new hot topic in industry, and these are these forever chemicals, these fluorinated substances that just don't go away. And those PFAS chemicals are found in firefighting foam, so AFFF. And a lot of the folks may have these AFFF systems for fire suppression throughout their factories or through their areas. And we obviously used a lot of it in aviation. It's a great firefighting foam for jet fuel and for the aviation industry, but these forever chemicals are in there, and not only do they not break down in the environment, they stay around for a long time, but they are linked to causing cancer as well. So very, very hazardous. So the industry as a whole is moving to these SFFF chemicals, which are synthetic fluorine-free foams, but they're not as effective. So I'm hoping that over time that this technology there advances and we can use them a little more effectively. But yeah, to answer your question directly, Jay, I think simpler is better in all circumstances with fire suppression.
If it's labor intensive or very intensive maintenance, how do you get ahead, stay ahead, and keep that safe? Is it headcount? Is it preventive maintenance? Like, what would you suggest?
Yeah, there it comes down to preventative maintenance. So if money is no option and you guys are in a in a capital and OpEx rich environment, they're great systems, and it comes down to more headcount, right? Having the people that are qualified to be maintaining these systems up to their spec and keeping them clean, and also making sure that the areas that they're used are kept exceptionally clean. And if that's the case, if you can do that, they work fantastic. But looking at most factories, and we all go through these cycles where we ask for help and then we ramp up resources, and then maybe a product line changes, and then we have to downsize a little bit. And what happens in those environments is a lot of times these systems aren't kept up with like they should be, and then you start to have issues. So that's where I say simpler is better. The old school photo ionizing detectors and heaterized detectors and simple detection systems really don't require the same level of maintenance. You do an annual check on them and you replace them every 10 years. And other than that, you don't ever touch them. Where these Vestas type systems, you're in their monthly cleaning sensors and cleaning the equipment, and they're a lot more maintenance intensive.
And I think you just started to, or maybe you just completely answered my next question, and that is, if someone's tasked with developing a simpler system, and there's, say it's a blank slate, what's the best practice there? The recommendations you'd give? How would they do it? Who would they call? What are the resources?
Yeah, I think a couple resources. So if you're insured by Factory Mutual, they're obviously a good partner to work with and listen to their recommendations, and they have the ability to do a lot of testing. Underwriter Laboratories, so UL does a lot of testing. You can look at the systems, make sure they're UL approved, make sure they're FM approved. If they have those stamps on them, there's a good chance that they're going to be good systems for you, and you don't have to second guess it. But really, in fire systems design and buildings and everything, simple wet systems. If you have cold temperatures, use a pneumatic air system where you have a valve inside it. Then once the air pressure is released, it would release water. Stay away from all these glycols and all these systems where, again, you have to test the glycol. You have to replace it every so often, and it's just very maintenance intensive.
So if someone is thank you, if someone's in a maintenance intensive environment and they're given the resources to make it simpler, how difficult does it even make sense to do that? Or do you just stay up with the maintenance? Would you ever say change your system to a simpler system?
Yeah, I'd say change your systems to a simpler system, because the cost up front to change back is you'd have to do a return on investment. But in a lot of the cases in the systems that we had, they're paying for themselves in 2.5, 3 years, just in the maintenance cost savings. So as with anything, cost benefit analysis or return on investment ROI calculation, use the data and use that to make your decisions. If something has an ROI that's greater than 5 or 6 years, maybe you don't do it, right? But if it's an ROI less than 5, probably a good idea as a company to be doing as many of those as you can to keep driving your revenue and cutting the bottom line.
Great advice. So your quote was, I believe, you'd rather run into a fire than away from one, or something into a burning building. What did you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been doing that for over 20 years. The house is on fire or the building's on fire, I'm going in. And that's, I think, relevant to any HSE professionals that are listening. Most of us got into HSE for the right reasons, right? We're here to help the people, and we're here to run to the problems, to help solve the problems, not to make excuses and run away. And that's really been the focus in my career.
Any other advice you'd give around, fire safety systems or best practices that people could pick up from here, Joe?
Yeah, I think water conditioning is very important. So if you're, I know a lot of your listeners are in the greater Boston area, and around city and municipality systems, you have pretty good water quality. So you have a little bit of free chlorine in the water. You have softened water, so you're not going to cause a lot of scaling. So in those types of environments, just wet basic fire systems will work very, very well with little maintenance, right? Flushing and normal maintenance. When you get into these off municipality systems where people are drawing well water or regional water where the total dissolved solids are higher, or you have acidic water, it becomes critical to make sure you're testing the water, you're cycling and flowing. Maybe you do quarterly, drain downs of your fire suppression systems instead of annual, those sorts of things to try to make them last a little longer and not see the degradation that you'd see.
Great advice. Great advice. I want to ask you more about you and what Joe does outside of all this fire safety and HSE. Is there anything we haven't touched on? Though? I think we covered the topics that we really wanted to get into here today. But anything I might have missed, Joe, with you?
No, I think if you asked what my purpose is, it's really about volunteerism and giving back. And like I said, I've been a volunteer and career fireman mixed over the last 20 plus years. I give back through local organizations. Was the president and lead for a local Lions Club and other organizations. I think it's important that we all volunteer and give back wherever we can, and I think that helps drive the community that you work in. So a lot of your listeners probably are facilities directors or managers. Some are probably in small towns or suburbs. And I think those relationships that you can build with local fire departments, local police, local municipalities, by doing good in the community can help the business as well, right? Because it's nice to you don't want to create any relationships where you go in and you're getting a permit just because you're friends with them, right? But you want to have those relationships where when you go in to ask for a permit, ask for a change, or you are working on something for the company, that the folks know who you are and that there's already an established relationship. And that, as a facilities person, will make your life a lot easier, right? When you're not getting pushed back right out of the gate for a new project or an expansion or things like that. So it all comes down to I think the relationships in this industry are very, very important. I think it's better to open doors than it is to close them, and to have no, not everybody's going to agree all the time, and that's okay. But I think it's important that we, as HSE and facilities professionals, understand and listen to the person that has the opposite view. I've been in rooms with folks where you have 20 people aligned and one person's not aligned. I want to hear what that one person that's not aligned has to say and understand why they're not aligned, because I think that's more important than why the 20 are aligned, and make sure we're making the right decision.
Great advice. Great, smart, sound advice. Thanks, Joe. And it's not you definitely give back a lot, and I agree. And I just quick share here. Both of my grandfathers were lifelong firefighters, so I admire it. I admire the career and what you guys do. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's something it's a labor of love. We enjoy it. We help. I enjoy helping the public and helping people. And that's we just experienced this ice storm the last weekend, and spent most of my weekend out running around driving a fire truck, and I wouldn't want anything more.
Good for you. Good for you. And how about I think you have a couple of teenagers at home. Is that accurate?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
A 16-year-old and a 13-year-old. So the example of this weekend, when the power goes out for about 8 or 10 hours, it becomes very difficult to get them motivated.
And what do you guys do for fun?
I live right now in the Poconos, so I've been an avid skier, a lifelong skier. So we like to get out, spend time in the outdoors skiing. Summertime, I have a boat, so I like to get out on the water and just enjoy boating and enjoy the outside. And then other than that, as a safety professional, this is going to sound off, but I ride motorcycles, and I enjoy getting out riding dirt bikes and motorcycles and adventure bikes, and getting out and seeing what the country has to offer.
Outstanding. Big time outdoorsman, huh?
Yeah.
That's great.
Absolutely.
Well, this is a wealth of information, and I really thank you for taking the time. Joe, I'm sure people are going to have questions or want to learn more from you. How would you recommend they get in touch with you?
I'd recommend if they want to find me on LinkedIn, it's Joseph Gilliland. And right now I work for Sanofi. They can find me on LinkedIn and send messages through there. And that's the easiest way to contact me. I check that daily. And that's the best way. And I can provide you the link, Jay, for your page as well.
Perfect. Excellent. That's how we connected, and then realized we have a common friend, Matt Twardy, who we'll mention again. And I don't know if you and Matt, I don't know if Matt would want to be on the show for a third time, but maybe we should have a discussion with you and he on the same stage, if you will.
I would love that. I think I would love the opportunity to be on the same show with Matt. Like I said, friend, mentor. I think he's great. He's the guy that if you have questions out there about HSE management systems and about how to do it right, you reach out to Matt. I'm more of the execution guy. So if you have problems and need help on how to execute something and how to make it work, how to take the fire and turn it into something bright and shiny, I'm the guy to call. So we kind of Matt and I work both in HSE, but kind of different aspects. And I think that's what makes us great partners over the years.
Yeah, sounds very complimentary, actually. Very much so. Well, very good. Joe, thank you again so much for taking the time and really sharing all of your experience with us. Much appreciated.
Yeah, it was an honor, Jay. I really I'm glad that you're doing this webcast. I think or podcast. I think this is something that people can get a lot of value from. And I admittedly have not been able to watch all your episodes yet. I'm close. I think I have 5 or 6 left to go back and watch. But they're all very interesting and insightful. And I think the more we open our minds and we continue learning and through this collaboration in this type of environment, the better. And I'm happy to be a part of it.
Thank you so much for that feedback. It's very helpful to hear those things, reinforcing for all of us to know that. So thank you, Joe. And thank you for everyone who tuned in today. A lot of information here, lots that Joe shared. Again, fire safety. We haven't had much conversation, if really any, around that. And I thought it was really, really helpful. So if you learned something, if you laughed, if you'd like to get in touch with Joe, please do so through LinkedIn, like he said, and tell somebody else about the show. So until next time, it's been a great Facility Rockstars episode, and we'll see everyone next week. It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Colutus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.